Working for you. A weekly talk radio program which highlights developments of national interest and the activities of your St. Kitts Nevis government. Join host Lesroy Williams as he presents news, views, reports, and interviews about everything regarding the activities of the Team Unity government and the building of our communities and the development of St. Kitts Nevis. Tune in and call in to interact with your government and share your views regarding the upward forward development of your community and our beautiful Twin Island Federation. Working for You is weekly, every Wednesday live from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. on ZIZ Radio, Win FM, and Sugar City FM with rebroadcast on participating stations. Working for You.
A pleasant afternoon to all who have tuned in to Working for You today. I am Lesroy Williams. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's program. We continue to appreciate your company from week to week, wherever you are listening all over the world. Today we are going to be having a discussion on gender affairs. And I have in the studio with me two officials from the Department of Gender Affairs. I have Mrs. Celia Christopher, who is no stranger to this program. Mrs. Christopher is the Director of the Department of Gender Affairs. Mrs. Christopher, welcome.
Good to be here.
Right. And I have with me a very exemplary young man who works at the Department of Gender Affairs. He is a gender field officer, and his name is Mr. Dion Brown. Mr. Brown, welcome to this program.
Thank you for having us.
Is it your first time on this program?
First time.
It's your first time.
I'm excited.
And it won't be your last time.
Hopefully
Good.
not.
We're happy to have you. Okay. The Department of Gender Affairs does a lot of work. And the work that it does cannot be underscored enough. But I think somehow in the general domain that sometimes people do not really understand or appreciate the work that is done by the Department of Gender Affairs. Oftentimes when we hear gender, we think that it really speaks to females, women, but gender is about males and females. Sometimes we don't really understand what it's all about when we hear things like gender and so on. We start thinking all kinds of other things about homosexuality and all kinds of things without having a proper understanding of the term. Mrs. Christopher, I want you to expound on the Department of Gender Affairs and its role. And also if you can give us a definition of gender. What is gender? Because some people think too that gender is sex. Gender is not sex.
Gender is often so misunderstood by people in the general public. Now, gender really speaks to the socially constructed behavior of men and women, including cultural. And sex is understood as the biological aspect of gender. So people sort of use them interchangeably and don't really understand which one is what. So, as again I will say, the gender speaks to the socially constructed behavior of men and women, and sex is biological, male, female.
Right, so in other words, socially constructed behavior. In other words, how people are socialized in society. In other words, you learn what it is to be a man, or you learn what it is to be a woman. You learn certain behaviors that attributed to both sexes.
Yes.
And different cultures sometimes
society and so on.
And different cultures sometimes have different forms of socialization
Yes.
in terms of gender.
Yes.
In some societies, men are not expected to do this. Men are not expected to wash dishes and to do housework. That is for the women.
Yes.
And then in some societies, they are so, how must I put it, that it borders on the line of what I consider to be ridiculous. But I cannot say that because, you know, we have to talk about cultural relativism
Yes.
rather than just everybody being the same. But in some societies, you have male-dominated societies and so on. Women are somehow pushed on the back burner. They don't even go to school sometimes, and you know the whole line in terms of the family and so on is male, very patriarchal societies. And
Yes.
and also we have to remember that we have come out of, you know, the Judeo-Christian kind of paradigm as well, that is very, very patriarchal.
Yeah.
You know, and today now in society we are talking, Mrs. Christopher, more about equality of the sexes and gender equality and so on. What do you have to say about that?
First, I want to say gender is about people, and people are central to any development. So it is cross-cutting. It cuts across class, ethnicity, all of those things, gender. So you will find gender cutting across, for example, all of our ministries that we have here, gender is cross-cutting. It's just that for some people gender is important and for others it may not be the priority. But I needed to say that. But the role, people misunderstood the role of the Department of Gender Affairs. And the role of the Department of Gender Affairs is one of raising awareness of gender-related issues. It is about advocacy, and it is about making referrals on behalf of the people, the vulnerable groups, and so on. We are a very small department which consists of 5 members, including we have 3 field officers, an executive officer, and myself. The executive officer, her time is mostly tied up with report writing, because we have to report at the local, regional, and international level. Everything that our government have signed has a gender component to it, and so we are expected to report on the country, what the country is doing with regards to what we have signed on to. So that is important for the general public to know. We don't spend our time just dealing with cases between men and women and so on. As I've said before, we make referrals, and I'll come to that, where we refer what. There are programs related to other dimensions of, we are occupied reporting and so on. However, there are programs related to other dimensions of gender, which we are not able to work on due to our capacity, including gender and the environment. You know, that's a big thing now. And so we are expected to conduct programs on that, but we don't have the capacity to do that at this time. You have governance and democracy. That's another one. Etc. And there are a lot more based on the different dimensions, because you have religion, you have law, you have, as I said before, disaster, the environment, and all of that. And we don't have the staff to deal with that. So I'm hoping, and this may be a little plug here, that we may be able to get at least 2 additional officers in order to conduct these programs. So if the minister is listening, if the ministers are listening, please give us a little top up there with with 2 other officers. Our current programs include, but are not limited to, working with men and boys, advancement and empowerment of women, Project Viola Teen Mothers Program, gender-based violence, and working, this is a new one, working with incarcerated women.
I didn't hear you say, Mrs. Christopher, advancement and empowerment of men.
Well,
you said
well,
you said women, but I'm assuming
yes, we
that
the
mean
empowerment of men under the male program. So
right
but I should have mentioned that.
Yes, because today we are
then
hearing.
it sound a little discriminative and biased, so I should have mentioned it. So
Yes.
thank you for
Because
pulling me up on that one.
today we are hearing a lot of you know, and this can be debated about male marginalization
Yeah.
and how males are marginalized and so on. I have a problem, and so on, with some sort of thinking where that is concerned. But nonetheless, we're talking about equality. We're talking about advancement
Right.
and empowerment of both sexes.
But you
Of
see,
course.
a long time ago the focus was on women, but things have changed now because boys are equally at risk, men are at risk. So now we have to open up the program to include all gender. And I should have mentioned that. So we
Yes.
can't relegate it to just working with women. But we do have programs in the department where we work with men. As I've said, we have a platform for working with men and boys. We do the same empowerment with them and so on. So they're not left out of the equation.
Do you know that once ago we heard a lot about women being abused and physically abused? And it always speaks to, when you hear people are being abused or in abusive relationships, it is about the dynamics of power.
Or relations.
Power relations and one person trying to dominate the other and so on, keep another person in their place and all of that sort of a thing. It's also a sign of weakness, really.
Yeah, insecurity.
Insecurities. However, nowadays what you have is that we are hearing, and it's coming out, maybe because before people were too ashamed to talk about it. You have the reverse, you have women who are abusing men. And they're doing it in all kinds of different ways. Whether it is that they are simply trying to shame them in terms of their ego shaming, and using all kinds of stories to shame them. And we know what are some of the things that can shame.
There's a lot of verbal abuse.
That we can shame men with.
Yeah.
You tell them all kinds of things. They don't have the sexual prowess. And they are not able. And all kinds of things. And of course that goes to a man's ego.
Yeah.
And some of them even go as far as to physically abuse. So abuse is on both sides.
Yes. Yes.
Well, we do see cases of abuse of men in the Department of Gender Affairs.
But sometimes men don't come forward
But you see,
because
the thing is, the men's pride get in the way. And so a lot of these things are underreported. The brave ones will come forward, probably when they can't take no more, they'll come forward. But the Department of Gender Affairs is there to serve. We don't see things as men and women, because when legislation is made and when we have policies and so, it speaks to victims. So whoever the victims are, whether it's a male, a female, a grandmother, a child, or whoever, once you're being abused, the department is there to help you. So they're coming in, they speak to me, and sometimes I make referral on their behalf. I cannot say how far that those referral would go, but we do what we have to do in the Department of Gender Affairs, because we see it as just another client coming in to complain about their situation.
Right.
But I want to also speak to the state's advancement with regards to some of the program that what they have done. The Department of Gender Affairs has worked to ensure the following state advancements, which would help to facilitate gender equality and equity. The domestic violence legislation, and these are documents and programs that help to empower our clients as well as to give them social protection. We have the domestic violence legislation. So if you are abused, whether you're abused, whether you're a man, a woman, a child, grandmother, grandfather, whatever, you can find redress under that particular legislation. Then we also went one step further. The government has gone one step further. They have established now the domestic violence protocol, which outlines clearly the role of each department who is involved in the issue of domestic violence. So you don't have to wonder anymore whether, boy, I wonder if I should go over here by this person and make a complaint. You are entitled to go to some of these agencies and lodge your complaint, and they're entitled to make sure they treat you with respect and to assist you in whatever the issue is. And it's very broad because it covers physical abuse, verbal abuse, and all of those things. So you can't know unless you come to the department or you listen up for programs like these, and you'll find out what redress you can have under these pieces of legislation. We also have the establishment of a legal aid clinic, and I would like for you to do a program with regards to this particular area, because This particular department, to my understanding, should and must, but I don't know to what extent because I don't have any data on it, help vulnerable people. I don't have any data on it, so I really can't speak to the audience or the target group that they're helping. So that is why I'm asking you to do a program on that for the benefit of the general public, because in the absence of information, people are confused and they spread a lot of different negative rumors and so on. So if we give them the information, they get a better understanding of why these departments and so exist. The government is in the process of developing a national gender policy which is going to address the issue of gender equity and gender equality, and serves to help in the development, to provide a legislative framework for the development in the country with regards to gender equality. We have social protection programs for vulnerable groups, including persons with disabilities, single mothers, the elderly, etc. There are programs in our ministries that help these people. We just have to get the information out there so that people can understand it, know where to go to access these services, but the services are there. What we do when you walk into the Department of Gender Affairs depends on what issue you come with. If you come with an issue of, say, physical abuse, we are not police officers, they're breaking the law. Once the law has been broken, it's a criminal offense, then we make the referral to the Special Victims Unit. If it is one where you need to speak to somebody because you have issues and you don't want to keep your problems to yourself, one of the things I tell my officers, do not interfere with things that they're not trained for. You're not a counselor. So what we'll do is refer you to the counseling department, and you could speak to those people that can help you. I don't want them to sit and listen to your problem knowing they can't help you. What is the point? So you refer them to the department. Then you also have social assistance. That's an area in our department where we make referral to that department. Of course, they have their criteria. We are not here telling you when you go for social assistance, you go over there and you just say, I want this and somebody's going to give it to you. It doesn't work that way. There are criteria that you have to meet. You go politely and respectfully and you put your issues to them and they will help you. We have the social, we serve single mothers. They are all part of that social protection program because they fall under vulnerable groups. And most of government programs is geared toward helping those people who cannot really help themselves. But they have to know that it's there and they have to know how to access these programs. So the programs are there.
Okay, now you touched on a number of things there. But I wanted to ask you...
And I forget to mention a very important department, the Department of Child Protection Services. All matters, sometimes they come through the Department of Gender Affairs, but all matters pertaining to child protection goes to the Department of Gender Affairs. The director, the acting director for that department is Mr. Gerald Connor, who was here.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. So if you have an issue, there is where you go with child issues. In terms of the social protection, we have a new director in the person of Ms. Oslin Ward Harris. So when you come to the department and you want to access social services, we will send you to Ms. Oslin Ward Harris. Now I'm taking you a little tour of the ministry. You have a child. You have a lot of problems with this child and you throw up your hand in the air and say, I want the child to go to New Horizon. It don't work that way. The children going to New Horizon are sent there through the court. They offend the court and so they are sent over there. So it's not that you call and say, well, I can't go with my child and I'm sending them New Horizon. Nobody is going to take you and it don't work like that. You have to follow the rules.
Yeah, and that prevents also, Mrs. Christopher, people from simply shirking their responsibilities of looking after their children because they can't go with them. If you can't go with them, then what is that saying? Then you need some help.
Yes.
You need some help in terms of the relationship that you have as a parent with your child.
Yes.
Not to take the child away from you and think that solves the problem, because that might just be
that is a part of the problem.
It's a part of the problem.
So,
and it might be making the problem worse.
And the person that heads up that department is Miss Adele Williams. Then you have the counseling department headed by Miss Michelle Blake. So those are all the departments under that ministry. So you have to know what your issue is and where do you want to go to address.
Yes.
So you could find some redress for these issues.
Yes.
For these issues. And so those are some of the services that we provide at the ministry. Now, we are here really actually to speak about Dion's mentorship program.
Yes, and we are going to come to that.
Yeah.
But before we come to that, I wanted to ask you, has anyone come to the Department of Gender Affairs to complain or to document anything in terms of equal work for equal pay when it comes to gender? Because in some places that is an issue. You have women and men who are in the same positions, but somehow the woman is underpaid while the man is paid above the woman. And when one really asks why this is so, there can be no answer except for that one is male and one is female. You know, and then you have some places too where women, it seems like the preferred candidate for certain roles are men, and people don't push enough to have, for example, women in certain roles. We can only look at male-dominated fields, for example, even in terms of politics in our Caribbean and so on. While we've had a few women, and we've had a very few good ones, and some of them have become prime minister recently. You have Mayor Motley, you've had Dame Eugenia Charles, you've had Kamla Prasad Bissessa in Trinidad and so on. You've had the Governor General in Barbados. There was a female, and then you had in St. Lucia, Dame Louise, and so on. Now, there are few and far between, and the ratio in terms of male to female still needs a lot when it comes to gender equality.
Well,
what do you have to say about that?
I'm glad you raised that point, because it was only this morning that I received an email from an organization called Civil, which looks at governance and democracy. And their focus is on the participation of women in politics and the decision-making process. And with regards to the Federation, we have trained, in the past, we have trained over 100 women. We went all around this country training women in leadership, so that if you're ready to take on the political leadership, you're trained for that. We had all of those. We trained in Nevis as well. One or two persons came out of the train who was successful in the training. Well, Marcella came out of that program, the Honorable Marcella Labor. She came out of that program. And there are other women, but the problem that we have, and which I am going to try to address, I don't know how successful I'll be, is to speak to these political parties. We have a lot of political parties in the country. And we want to know, or we would like to see them to include women on the ticket. Yes, you have the Unity Party, the PAM Party. We do not have a female candidate. We want them to, for this coming election, we would like to see them, include a female candidate. The PLP, they have a female candidate in the person of Miss Akila. Honorable Akila Byron. Then you have the CCM. We would like them to include a female candidate in this slate of candidates for this election. You have the NRP, and you have all of these different political parties there. And maybe you might even see new one coming up, I don't know. But all we are asking is that when you're giving your consideration, try to include women in this party, because sometimes we bring the balance that you're looking for to the party. And so some of the issues that you're dealing with, the views of women should be taken into consideration. So that is what we plan to do. We're going to be starting training shortly. We're going to be calling up some of these organizations, because you see, it's one thing, people will go on the radio and say all sorts of things, but when you're ready to do training, you can't find some of these people. If you want to make a difference, you have to get in there to make a difference. You cannot make a difference by being outside and talking.
So you think by having more women represented in politics, represented in making decision making at the national level,
Right.
you think that it would redound to the benefit of the advancement of women? Do you think so?
There
Have you
been,
seen
right,
it?
There have been some advancement of women, but we are not where we really want to be. We want to be at the highest decision-making level, and we are only 20% in there. So that really need to be fixed. And we have international organization who looks on and watching this and want to know, so when are you going to move this thing and so on. But you can't do anything without people, and people have to want to do these things. But they can be nudged and helped by introducing them. At some point when we were in this program, I say, why not give the senatorial position to women? And so just get them on their way, and then later on they could, go into the wider field and so on. But there are a lot of challenges.
Is it that, Mrs. Christopher, that women are not motivated in these parts to enter politics because they do not see it as their sphere, as their place? They are more involved in looking after their children and that sort of a thing. Do you think that is one of the
could be one of the consideration, but that is just a part of it, because there are many factors in this whole thing.
Especially when you have so many single mothers, for example.
Right, we have a
high
household,
single mother household, and therefore politics is a very demanding profession, field. And so therefore, and especially if you don't have the help of a significant other,
but again, you have the issue of the political climate. In these small parts, you enter politics for all the right reasons, but you can only get so far before people really crowd you out with the negative political tribalism and all of that stuff and so on.
But why do you say people, Mrs. Christopher? I think that politicians crowd themselves out because they sometimes are the ones who encourage this tribalism.
Right, okay, that's all that is part of it. Then you have, they don't get the support financially as the men would get. The women are in the party, yes. They do all the background work pertaining to women, all the nurturing work, the cooking and the this and the that and all of that and so on. But you don't find them up in those committees where the positions in the party, where the decisions are made in the party. They are relegated to a low position in the party, so they don't really have that input that we want them to have to represent women at that particular level. And this is why I'm saying that the political parties need to give more consideration to this type of thing. The world is changing. You have women prime minister. You're going to have sooner or later, you're going to have the head of the UN going to end up to be a woman, and they have to deal with it. So let's not wait until we get to that point. Let's start advancing our women. There are bright women out there who want to make contribution, and sometimes they just want a little encouragement and so on.
And we've had, especially in recent times, you hear the women of Unity, and you hear the women of PAM, and you hear all kinds of things, and but sometimes it seems, what do they do? Sometimes they're going to put on a breakfast here and a breakfast there, and they're the prayer warriors. They're the ones there to pray. Man, your praying is a good thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
But at the very same time, you are saying, Mrs. Christopher, it somehow seems that they are simply relegated in the politics to certain roles.
I remember
that are not at the top level.
I remember at a situation we were trying to form an entrepreneurial group. And I was told to be the secretary. I said, not me. I don't want no secretarial role. I want to run this thing. Why you going to offer me the secretarial role? Why I can't run it? I could take the notes and I could do all of that, but I can't run it. So I said, no, find a secretary. The man in there could be a secretary too. A male could be a secretary. So
yeah, but you see, there again we go, Mrs. Christopher, that there are some roles that are seen as male dominated, and that they're for males. For example, it is often seen that a secretary is a woman's job,
well, we got to
and so therefore a man is not supposed to be a secretary, or it's very rare to have a man as a secretary. Also nurses. Let's face it, how many male nurses do we have at the hospital?
But before we get to it, let me tell you something. When they say it's a woman's job, it's a woman's job in certain situations. Sometimes when you look in the boardroom, who is the secretary? They don't want the women in there. And who is the secretary? The man is they got the secretary. They know where to place the secretary. They place you where it is convenient for them.
I see.
And they got to start practicing this thing. Male nurses, they should be encouraged. The stereotyping. A man come forward because he got passion and he want to be a nurse. Everybody beat him down. Oh, what you want to be a nurse for? You're
you're
a
a woman.
homosexual.
Yeah.
You're this and you're that and so on. We got to done with those kind of things, man. We got to advance the society.
Yeah, and so therefore part of the role of the Department of Gender Affairs is to educate the populace in terms of these things, because a lot of things that we have are stereotypes. We have stereotypes of, of people.
Yeah, for gender roles.
Yeah, we put people into boxes and we
Yeah,
think
and
that
labels
and labels and all of
Yeah.
this sort of a thing, and you cannot push people on the margins of the society, because you need society to be inclusive of all types and views and lifestyles and so on, once we can have that respect for each other.
And I am convinced if more women end up in parliament, we'll have a more balanced view of what is happening in the country. I am convinced about that. I will die thinking that. And that is why we are going to make sure that we do these programs. I don't know if the people are going to come, but we're going to be out in a crusade trying to find organizations that has people that they can put forward. People have the passion to get into, whether it's politics, leadership or whatever, to come forward and take up these roles. Because as I say, it's one thing to hold your saying so, but it's another thing to be inside. When you're on the inside, you have the information, you could do something with the information you have.
Right, and which takes us to Mr. Brown.
But before you come off of that topic, I have a question. Do you think it's because we are like a Christian society and women generally want men to lead?
From a church,
Once ago, from a Christian perspective,
Right.
from a Judeo-Christian perspective,
Yeah.
the man was seen as the head of the household. And even in churches and so on, you were told that the woman would cover her head.
Yeah.
And the reason she would cover her head is because to say, well, she was not the head of the house. Those things are outdated.
right, gender is fluid and the roles are changing.
They are outdated. And we can no longer operate in today's contemporary society by using those same very standards. I mean, let's look at it. They used to say at one time that the man is the breadwinner. But a lot of men are not any breadwinner anymore. It's the woman who is the
Exactly,
breadwinner
the roles are changing
home.
now. The roles are changing. Gender is not static; it's fluid, and so the roles are changing. And so we have to now get the understanding that these roles from way back they're changing.
It's interesting because I saw something.
Look, you have chefs, and some of them are the greatest cooks.
Yes.
That was a job that, I used to say, it seems as they used to put women name on some of the job, then that is a woman job, that is this and that. Only women can cook, but you got great chefs now. You have
I think he has always
you have
been like
engineers. No, but you see, back in those times, a man didn't want to be known as a cook because for some reason it attributes something else to his manhood. He don't want to be named as no cook, so
That's
he's not
right.
going out there and tell nobody he's a cook.
But
He gonna
not
tell them
now.
he's
That
an
is
engineer.
changing
Right,
now.
the world
Yeah.
changing now.
Yeah.
Right.
And you have women who will tell you, oh, well, I don't want to be an electrician and so on. But you have electricians, you have women who are electricians, you have engineers, you have they're driving heavy duty trucks and all of that and so on. So you can say, in today's thing, you cannot now say that this is the role of a man or woman because the role is changing.
I'm not talking about roles though. I'm talking about
But in
women.
but
Women
in-
generally want men to lead.
I disagree.
Yeah.
I totally disagree with that. Maybe
You know,
in some instances they may want men to lead, but they also could play that leadership role. It's not
I
that they
do
can't.
agree.
Some women, I don't know what percentage of women, but there are some women who like to be led.
Yes,
Yeah,
some
to
like
the-
to be
yeah.
led.
And there are, but I do not know if that is a gender thing, because there are some men who like to be led as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they were taught, they
Yeah.
were socialized that way. But as the generation changed, the thinking is going to change, and so we're not going to follow docilely and follow a man because he's supposed to be the leader. Or a man ain't going to just follow a woman because she's supposed to be the leader. People have their own independent thinking.
You are correct. I saw something on Facebook that somebody posted, and it read, dudes quick to say women don't cook like grandma used to, but you all don't pay bills like grandpa used to either.
Yeah.
And when I saw it, I said to myself, so the roles are shifting.
Yeah.
The role that you thought that the woman was there, she was supposed to cook and she was supposed to clean the house and she was supposed to wash the dishes, and you come home and you make everything clean. But now you have more women in the workplace.
Yes.
And if they're not cooking like they used to cook,
Because they are working.
because they are working,
Yeah.
but it also says something about grandpa, that grandpa used to pay the bills, but
Yes.
nowadays you have a lot of vagabonds.
Yes.
Oh, no, want to pay
Some
the
men
bills.
who are not contributing
Nothing.
anything
No,
and not
nothing.
and are very irresponsible in the home and so
Yeah.
on, but yet they expect the best
Yeah.
treatment.
Yeah.
That can't be right.
Well, you
know?
see, back in those roles, men used to take their roles seriously. They protect their family, they provide for their family, and so on. That has changed to some extent.
Now we're hearing a lot about the marginalization of men.
Yeah.
Why when I hear about that, sometimes I get a little confused, and why I get a little confused is because we are in a patriarchal society. But if you look at the systems that controls the world, let's start at the level of the UN. Who is at the top? A man. You come down to the regional. Who are making the decisions in the region? Men. And in the homes, in some of the home, men in there. So how they get to be marginalized when they are making the decision? You don't marginalize yourself out of these things when you are in total control. You are in control. You are the guy who's passing down the rules and so on.
So what you're saying, Mrs. Christopher, is that power has not shifted. Even though, because now in the Caribbean, for example, you have more tertiary educated women,
Yes.
more professionals and so on, but you are saying that society still has not shown that shift
Exactly.
in terms of power.
Exactly. So you talk about how many women graduate from college and so on and all of that and so. Where are they in the workforce? Where you find them? Sometimes you find them at the lower end. When they're supposed to, with all of this education, they're supposed to be also helping to run things. I'm not saying they should run things.
Yeah, but
on-
why are they not running things? And you know, you have many factors,
Yes.
and sometimes the factor is not always a gender one.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is political.
Yeah.
Sometimes our people can become so political that they do not have an objective view. And they cannot speak their minds, and they're not independent in their thinking, and so they become very, very cowards, and they're cowed, and they go into a corner because they don't want to upset the apple cart. We have too many people in the Caribbean who say that they are graduates, whether they're from the University of the West Indies
Yeah.
or whatever, but they really haven't shifted the status quo in our society. They're doctors, they're lawyers, and so on, and they focus on those
Well,
things.
you find us
They're
in the
offering
own little corner.
they're offering a service that is good,
Right.
yes, but at the very same time, when it comes to public policy, when it comes to really upsetting the apple cart in terms of how our society is going, they are not doing it.
What I find in some of these Caribbean islands is that those people you talk about, doctors and so on and so, as women, and so some of them stay in their own little corner. They don't want to come out to, how should I put this, to help chart the way for the promotion of other women coming behind them. They stay.
Even some of-
I'm a doctor. My life is good. All is well with me. Why should I go get myself involved in all
Yeah,
of
and
that?
even some of these talk shows that we have, when issues are being discussed, you hardly hear them calling and say anything.
And they can do
And the
something
people
from
who
their
call
own-
in,
Yeah.
and the people who
They
are talking,
criticize.
and then they criticize
They
them.
criticize.
But they can take on leadership from that very sphere that they're in. They don't have to be a politician.
They don't have
They
to
don't
be.
have to be, but they can
You be a leader wherever you
can
are.
lead wherever you are. You can lead wherever you are.
Well, let's go to you, Mr. Brown, because
Yeah, yeah.
you are spearheading a very important mentorship program
It's a
called the
good
Boys Mentorship Program. What is it, and why do you think that boys need to be mentored?
Oh, okay. We just had a very important discussion about gender equality, gender equity in our spheres. But the Boys Mentorship Program come out of that idea, actually, the empowerment of women and girls should not come at the cost of this disempowering men and boys. There needs to be a balance, a gender balance. There needs to be equity. But it's really the the Boys Mentorship Program is really to provide viable alternatives to adolescent males for the antisocial behavior that can easily deteriorate to a life of criminality. You know, it's also to help provide opportunity for self-discovery and adventure and cultural exchange and leadership building. All those, those are the objective of the Boys Mentorship Program. Like I said, is to really to give viable alternative to antisocial behavior of adolescent males that can easily deteriorate to a life of criminality. Why boys need to be mentored? The statistics are showing that the majority of the household are single-headed single-headed household, which are mothers, single mothers. We realize that boys need both mother and father in their life, both men and female, men and women in their life as well. You know, a mother can teach a boy to be a man. In some instances, she can, but
let's face it, we're in a changing world.
Yeah.
And now we are talking about gay marriages.
Yeah.
And it is becoming very common all around the world.
Yeah.
We haven't had it here yet in the Caribbean, but there are people in the Caribbean who are going to court and all of this sort of a thing.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you have to have a male and a female raising a child. You are saying that you can't have both females or both males raising a child. Now, what constitutes the family? That is what we have to start looking at in terms of the family unit.
Yes.
Because once ago we used to say it's a male and a female, but now a family,
the family
is
are
two
changing.
males or two females who are together and they're raising children.
Yes.
That is also a debate. We don't want to confront it.
Yeah. It is a good debate. I don't think this now we
are not discussing that.
That's a
whole different issue in itself.
A whole issue in itself.
But we can't be ignorant to what's happening all around us.
Yeah, but as it is now, as the laws are structured now, a man and a woman should lead the family. It's a family. Of course, things are shifting. You know, there have been paradigm, and hopefully in the Caribbean, it will catch on in the Caribbean soon. But as it is now, you know, we're looking for men as role models to teach young adolescent males to how to be a man, what it is to be a man, and that comes with.
Yeah, but how can they? Sometimes you can't teach what you don't have. A lot of men have never had a father figure as a role model. And what we are seeing now in society, of course, you know, we are seeing a lot of, like, for example, the other day a young man said to me, you know, I have to look after my kids on the weekend because I want to provide for them what I never had for myself.
And it warms my heart when I see that. When I see men want to take on the responsibility. And mind you, you can't paint all of them with one broad brush. Because there are good men out there. They are men, they are good family men. Whether they are single, married or whatever, they are good men who take on the responsibility.
In fact, there was a project some time ago with single fathers. There was a single father, but there are a number of single fathers in St. Kitts that who raise children. You know, that project came out on the UNESCO actually. So there are fathers, men out there who really want to take on the responsibility, and sometimes they do have to learn how to be fathers, and sometimes they do have to learn how to be men. But the fact that they're trying and they want to take on the responsibility, even though they may not had like that father figure to pass on anything to them, you know, at least they know what it is. How it is to be without a father, and they are motivated to be that father to their children, also to someone else's children too. Because what we want is the community get back to the days where the community take care of each other.
So what is this boys mentorship program all about? You said boys.
Boys, yes.
What is it all about?
Okay, there are 5 elements to the program. The life and the first element is the life and social skills element. That is to train boys, that is to enable them to adopt positive behavior in order to deal with the effective demands and challenges of the world, daily life. Actually, the adolescent male should be prepared in how to write a curriculum, how to take an interview, dining room etiquette. These are the life skills that they need to get through life and be able to, be a citizen, and even for themselves to become a male role model in the future. So we are training these men boys to be men, positive men, to be role models for other men. If we don't start now, it would be much worse later.
Okay.
The second element is the technical skills element. That is to train boys in things like plumbing and small appliance repair, auto mechanics, and so on. We did start that with small appliance repairs and auto mechanic, and that serves to help them to have a skill, even if they don't get to fifth form and do the 6 year and pass the 6 subjects, and so at least they will have a skill that they can be able to market themselves out there to to provide for their family. So we're looking at it holistically to develop the man in them, in them, so they can provide for them. Because what we understand is that if we don't really holistically prepare these young men, they are going out to fail regardless. And that is where they don't know how to be a man, how to take on the responsibility. If they're not working, then they can't take on the responsibility to take care of their children, the child, and so so this would give them at least a skill that they can depend on to market themselves, even to fix some things around the household as well, when they're breakdown and so on. Very quickly, we go on to the third element, which is the most important element, is the mentor-mentee attachment. We attach each boy with a male mentor. One mentor has one mentee. They're expected to spend up to 8 hours per month with them, roughly about 2 hours per week. We don't exactly tell them what to do with the mentee, but we want to make sure we tell them that it must not be anything illegal. In fact, we ask them to bring a criminal record whenever filling out the application form, because we want to make sure that the persons that we are attaching these boys to are really positive male role models. We actually ask them to bring their driver's license and their insurance, copy of the insurance, because we want to make sure it's children we are dealing with, and we want to make sure that whenever they take them out, they're doing the right thing.
What is the age group of the boys in the program?
Okay, it's meant for boys between the ages of 12 and 16. Sometimes we follow them up to age 19.
Okay.
And we follow them up to age 19 because we realize that they will come. They would sometimes go to AVEC or CFBC. So we want to follow them through that up to that age, and also to really completely prepare them for the world of work and for, because I always tell them life is rough out there. The school, when you go to school as a child, that's the easiest time of your life.
Yes. How many boys are in the program?
Right now we have about 24 boys, and we piloted in Chasville Mills. It was launched in July in 2016. We piloted in Chasville Mills, 12 boys from Chasville Mills. We launched in Bassett High last year in September, and we have 12 boys here, 24 boys, and we are about to go to Keon High, which will take it up to 36 boys. So we're making our way around the country.
No, I think that is an extremely important program, because, as you know, it is a lot of our young men. Young men do not drop out of the sky.
Yes.
They're first boys.
Yes.
And then they are socialized in a particular way that places them in a certain, some of them say circumstances, but what I'm trying to get at is that they somehow fall into that category, at risk. At risk youth, at risk men. And then they join gangs, and then they get involved in deviant behavior. and so on.
Yeah.
So rescuing them at that very early age is extremely important.
Yes.
It's an extremely important program. Now you have been recognized for the work that you do.
I want to say a little about that.
And I remember that the last time His Royal Highness was here, you know, Prince Charles,
Yes.
you were one of the persons chosen to meet him in recognition of your work. I think the Queen has recognized you. Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth, has recognized you. How do you feel in terms of being singled out for your work and your contribution as a young man?
Before he go there, I just want to put this plug in. Dion, I met Dion when he left CFBC. And there was something about Dion that jumped out at me when I met him first. He had the passion, he conducted himself very well, and I had a conversation with him. And I said to him, young man, what are you doing? You have just left college. What are you doing? He says he's not doing anything at the moment. So I say, okay, so if you don't have nothing to do, I have lots of things to do. Come up to the Department of Gender Affairs and volunteer. He volunteered for a year and a half. And when I tell you volunteer as if he was working in there. He was even doing more work than the officers, some of the officers in some of these departments. Dion was dressed that if you saw him on the street, you will think he was really a teacher. I said to him, if you're going in to deal with people's children, you have to carry yourself in a certain way. You have to have a certain decorum. Your shirt must be in your pants, your hair must be trimmed, and you must present yourself well, and you must speak well, and ask for the assistance that you need if you come across anything. And to this day, he have never let me down to this day, because he keep upgrading himself. So when I found out that Dion was going to meet the Queen, I had this joke to London to jump to meet the Queen. We had this big joke about it and so on. But it wasn't a surprise to me, because of the way, as I say, he conducts himself, and he pays attention to details. He has some qualities about him that I know Dion is going to keep improving. And I would not be surprised one day if I have to say Minister Brown, because I could see Dion going forward.
Yeah.
Take it over now, Dion.
Okay. I've always said that my achievement, I don't think much of it, you know, but
Assuming.
I don't think much of it. But whenever I achieve something, I said this is for other persons. This is to motivate and inspire other young men to do the same, to go out there and serve their community, to be positive male role models. So I'm really doing it for other persons to see that, you know, that there are young men, positive young men still out there, and to inspire those who are a little shy or afraid to come out and to really work. To show that they are positive young men as well. So it's really for when I achieve these things, when I work for to inspire and motivate and encourage and to empower others, to transform lives.
That is excellent. Now we must go to the phone lines. We are going to open up the lines and see if there are any calls. We have our listeners, and they might want to contribute something to this discussion. The numbers to call, the local number is 465-2555. That's the local number. And the international number is 1718-577-2916. 1718-577-2916. We welcome your calls. Right, so we were talking about gender equality and so on. And of course that when we speak about gender and so on, it always borders on human rights. And all over the world, especially where young people are concerned, we are seeing that young people now are not like before. They are rising up and they are demanding that they be heard,
Yes.
They are not putting up with a lot of the shenanigans.
Yes.
You know, and we put on the TV and we see it. University students protesting, young people protesting.
Yes.
They're saying that we are not going to put up with this from our leaders, whether they be political leaders, whether they be religious leaders, and so on. We need to be respected. Our rights
certainly
need to be
rights
respected.
respected.
Our freedoms need to be respected. There are certain inalienable rights that we have, human rights.
Yes.
They are universal, and you cannot disrespect us. And of course, in our Constitution, Chapter 2 of the Constitution of St. Kitts and Nevis deals with our fundamental human rights and the protection of those rights and freedoms. Now, I do know that, Dion, that you also work in the area of human rights
Yes.
and helping people to understand what those rights really are. How important do you think it is for young people to understand their rights, their human rights?
I think it's very important for young people to understand the rights, because if you don't know what your rights are, how would you know they are being violated? Right? You know, you will accept anything if you don't know what your rights are, what you are entitled to. And these are rights because you are human. They can't be taken away, and it's not rights that you earned. They are given to you from the inception of birth. You were born, and these are your rights.
So they are your God-given rights.
Right, God-given rights, yes.
Right, by the very fact that you are
a human,
being,
yes.
you have those rights
Rights,
which
yeah.
are inalienable.
Yes.
They're universal. They belong
Yes.
to everybody.
Everybody.
It doesn't matter your race, it doesn't matter your creed, it doesn't matter your religion, your political affiliation,
Yeah.
your sexual orientation.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Those rights are inherent
Yes.
in the human person.
being, yes. And just like everything else, I think young people need to learn the Constitution as well. What the Constitution says, you know, what your rights are, you know, what the law says, law of your federation says. So I think it's very important for persons to educate themselves on their rights and on the law of the land.
Okay, so every person is entitled to certain rights
yeah.
simply because they're human beings.
beings,
Now,
yeah.
what are some of those rights?
Some of the rights are the right to life, the right for right living condition. You must have social security, right to social security. No unlawful imprisonment. You're always innocent until proven guilty. The right to education, employment, and so on. And you know, you must no slavery actually. You know,
No forced labor.
No forced labor. You know, we had a very interesting discussion. Would you say children doing chores is forced labor?
I do not think that it is forced labor. It is part of. I would say it is part of learning responsibility. Responsibility in the home.
Yeah.
That's not forced labor. I know we have what you call child labor.
Child labor.
And you see sometimes that happening where children go out and they're on the streets
Yeah.
and they're working and so on, and their parents send them. No, that clearly is a violation. It's a different thing.
Yeah. Yeah. But these rights, you know, and of course, the human rights is a very complex issue. Because it just goes more than those 30 rights. Those 30 rights are universal. But in those rights, the human rights, we have different conventions that speak to specific groups, like the rights for children. You know, we have the Convention on the Rights for Children. We have the CEDAW, the Convention on Elimination of all form of violence against women and girls. You know, so we have like Convention of the Elimination of race discrimination. We have different convention, and we have the convention of the persons with disabilities as well.
Right, we have a caller.
Okay, go ahead.
Working for you, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for taking my call. Lady Christopher, you're doing a wonderful job as usual. Thank you so much. Coming from me, personally, I always love to hear you, and when I get the chance to interact with you, it's always nice. Dion, this is Val T. Great. I'm so proud of you, sir, and I know your mother is very proud of you. And don't forget what we talked about before. You went off to England to meet with the Queen. That offer is still here with us. Okay, Dion?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Now back to human rights. This issue of human rights. Human rights is a very broad topic because there's so many different rights fall under that banner. But we also have to be careful about asserting our rights, because your rights cannot infringe on my right. But that's for another discussion too, because when you have to either discuss one set of rights and do it thoroughly, because you'll find yourself going off into a lot of different rights that have other implications for
good point, Mrs. Christopher, but I think that the common thread running through a lot of these things is respect.
Right,
Yes.
right, yeah.
There has to be respect.
Right,
You
yeah.
cannot disrespect me and you know and my right
Yeah.
and expect that you have entitled to your right
Yeah.
You're
and that
infringing
you are
on
going
my
to
rights.
infringe on
My
mine.
rights, yeah.
I think it has to do with respect. I think it has to do with understanding. I think it has to do with being a tolerant society.
Yes.
Respecting differences
Yes.
and that sort of a thing. Because none of us is the same.
Yes.
Um,
And I
and
think
basically the problem that we have in society is the exclusion. When you exclude certain groups within the society,
Yeah.
when they don't, when you are trying to stifle their voice,
yeah.
and for
When you
them to
begin
be
infringe
heard,
on their rights, yeah.
when you begin to infringe, and then you have a
Right.
problem in the society.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because
And so
they're
therefore
gonna
people are going
organize.
to rise
They're gonna
up.
organize
People
and
are going
rise
to
up.
rise
Rise
up,
up,
and
yes.
people are going to, and I think that has happened. We've seen it all over the world, whether it is race, whether it is people being discriminated against in terms of their sexual orientation,
yes.
whatever the case is, people are going to rise up and ask to be respected and ask to be heard,
Yes.
and that they too have a voice.
Voice, yes.
We may not agree. We may not agree. But at the very same time,
But you owe them that level of respect to
You
let
owe-
them have their voice.
you
Yes.
owe a person and a group their level. So one of the rights, of course, is that we must not discriminate.
Discriminate and be responsible as well.
And we must be responsible. Rights go along with responsibility.
Responsibilities, yes.
And the biggest one, of course, is the right to life.
Right. Yeah.
We're not supposed to take anybody's life.
Yeah.
You didn't give them life.
You didn't give them
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
You know? And when we speak about life here, we are not just talking about killing a person physically. There's so many ways we can take the life of somebody,
Yeah.
damaging their reputation. You know, you destroy them to the point.
Defamation. Yeah.
Defamation, you invalidate them
Yeah.
to the point where the person almost becomes an invalid, a cripple.
Again,
You
I
cripple
think,
them.
Again, I think you see all of these human rights, the lack of information on some of these issues and what we have signed on to, something that could be the source of confusion. People don't know, and because you don't know, then you take the position. You just start from a position of not knowing and create more confusion around what you're trying to solve.
Working for you, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir, Mr. Williams,
Yes, good
and to your
afternoon.
panel. Reverend Cassius here.
Yes, Reverend Cassius.
Yes, I'd like to make a little input, if I may, please.
Sure.
I joined in a little late, so I'm not sure if my point might have been already deliberated before.
You go right
But,
ahead.
but as it relates to when we talk about equality and equipping our men, our boys, and my slant is specifically towards the boys and men and the males. I heard the word gender being used quite a bit.
Yes.
And I want to also, laud the efforts that the young man there, I missed his name, he spoke about in terms of trying to assist young boys and so on. But I find in all of our genuine efforts, we seem to still miss a certain dimension. And I think it begins with when we think about equipping our boys and girls, and like I said, in this case, boys, we think of equipping them in a very rounded manner, so that we don't only think of and speak about equipping our boys in terms of mechanics and welding and carpentry and so on, because ever so often we come back to the point about how our homes are being so bombarded with so much negativity, single parent homes, missing fathers. And so I think there's need for us to really give some thought to when we train and equip our young boys, our young men, that whole dimension of enabling them to be homemakers. I don't know if it's an area that we're afraid of. I know guys out there, when you talk about a man being a homemaker, the whole thing about soft and woman got you tied down and all this kind of nonsense comes up. But the reality is, at the end of the day, those men that we would want to praise and look up to as role models, those men are oftentimes men who are well-rounded and that home dimension out of their lives.
Yes.
These are men who contribute, not just financially, but contribute in a very meaningful and practical way in the homes. Men who cook, wash, clean, men who plait their children, their daughters here, men who assist with homework. Okay.
Yeah, Reverend Cassius, before you joined us, we had a discussion in terms of gender roles and gender socialization.
Right.
And we were saying that in some cultures, it depends on, because gender is something that is socially and culturally determined.
Right.
We said that in some cultures or in some societies, what happens is that males and females are socialized differently.
Right.
And of course, once ago, in some societies, it was thought that it's the woman to cook, and it's the woman to stay home and clean the house, to wash the dishes and to make up the bed, and all of that sort of a thing. In some societies, it is still like that.
Right.
However, in these parts, we see a sort of a changing in terms of those roles, your gender roles. You have more males and so on now becoming homemakers, and you see some of them washing dishes and some of them cooking.
Okay.
And
Well,
some of them helping to raise the baby and that sort of a thing.
Right. Well, you see, for me now, this whole concept of gender roles and that sort of a thing, to me that comes into some bit of a clash, for want of a better word, with the whole concept of equality.
Yes.
Because if we're going to talk about gender roles and we're also going to talk about equality, then what exactly do we want gender roles to mean for us?
Yeah, and that is one of the things that we would always think, because you're talking about gender equality of the sexes and so on.
Exactly.
And then sometimes too now what you find happening, people are saying that the roles are not so clearly defined. And then you run into all kinds of other things and so on. Of course, a man can't have a baby.
Yeah, right. Well, that's the extreme, of course.
And a woman cannot produce sperms. Don't care how much she tries.
Right. But I think there is a need, and I think what we're probably saying is that there's a need to revisit, the traditional understanding. And for me, having given it some thought, I don't think I have all the answers or the full answer. But for me, it means in large measure, equipping our children, both boys and girls, equipping our children to be rounded. Yes. Because you have so much varying circumstances that develop in life as you go along. I have heard some men give the testimony, and I join with them in the sense of my own personal experience. When I went to study to do my second degree, my wife and I switched roles.
Yes.
So whereas she was at home all the time taking care of our daughter and different things, I'm out, working for the church and so on. When I went to study, we switched roles. She went out to work. I stayed home to study, and I also took care of the home.
Right.
You know, and so from that perspective, I'm saying if we train our boys and girls to be rounded, you know, it will take us a long way.
Right.
Because
You're right.
I see a big part of the challenge that we talk about, men absent from homes. And if we can get our boys or young men to be more home conscious, you know, and understand, you know, the need for their presence and very involvement, and also train our girls, our young girls. I mean, you know, our men very often like to take advantage of the women when it comes to certain things, because they figure women don't know. You know, I had a parishioner in one of my former parishes. She went to a metal workshop, and she bent all of the steel to make some decorations for her window arm thing, the curtain rods. And she bent, when I saw the things in her home, I thought she had bought them. She told me she did it herself. She went to the welding place, and the guy was very busy, and he showed her. He did the first one, bent this thing and style it and so on, and he left her.
Right.
And she did all of that for herself.
Okay.
You know, so the equipment and so on. I think the whole idea of roundedness is something that we really need to put to the forefront.
Okay, thank you so much, Reverend.
So thank you very much.
Cassius, you're right on target.
I am glad
Miss
that Reverend Cassius raised that point. In 2009, there was a noticeable rise in criminal activities and violence, and crime and violence in the Federation. And Gender Affairs, having realized what was happening and that a large portion of the population is under the age of 35 years of age, and it can have serious social and economical implications for the country. At that time, the perpetrators of most of those criminal activities were boys and men, and gang violence was beginning to take root in the high schools. It was therefore imperative that a variety of programs be developed to harness and develop their skills. And so, to begin to address this issue, the Department of Gender Affairs, in collaboration with the Peace Corps and the Football Association, hosted a life camp to help in the education and personal development of teenage boys between the ages of 12 and 15. As we believe it is our advantage to teach teenage boys about emotional awareness, positive thinking, and all of those things. But the major objective for that was to teach them exactly what Reverend Cassius is saying. They were in a camp for 1 week, and they had to learn how to wash their clothes, how to wash dishes and all of that, and so that they could help in the home when their parents are out, and they could do certain things in the home. So it was to address that particular issue, to help them to become well-rounded. It was not just about giving them the little skills to weld and do carpentry and all of that. The issue of doing things in the home was center and foremost. The officer for that program at that time was Troy Watson.
Right.
Yeah. And so we did that. But I think where we fall down, it was a matter of funding. And so we could not, we did not continue the program, because we should have continued those weekend camps. Take those 12 to 15-year-old and keep them into weekend camps and teach them make the bed, wash the dishes, cook in the camp and do all of that. So when they get out of the camp and go back to their homes, they will have been well-rounded and could do things in their home. But we fall down on that, but it's not too late, because we're dealing with this program now. We have to really address that particular thing and the social graces, because you have these children, they're going out, they got the shot. I sometimes I wonder, they're going out into a formal setting, and when they leave home, I wonder where the parents are. All of these things we have to train these children at the age of 12 or even before that, how to conduct themselves.
Yes, we have had a whole lesson in that. Yeah. We were talking about human rights and the importance, because when we cannot speak about gender without touching human rights and talking about rights.
Yeah. Yes.
And equal rights for both males and females. Yeah. And rights go along with responsibilities. You can't have one without the other.
Yes.
And I think, Mr. Brown, one of the things that people need to understand, it doesn't matter wherever you are in the world, your rights remain the same.
It remains the same.
Whether you go to the US to live, whether you go to Canada, whether you go to England, you do not allow your rights to be abused.
Yes.
Your rights remain the same. But sometimes people abuse people's rights because of all kinds of things.
Yes.
They're not straight in terms of immigration and all of those sorts of things and so on, and sometimes they're disrespected. And then we all have the same rights before the law as well.
Yes.
But sometimes you know how the law operates.
Something-
The law operates is term who have the money and so on and who could afford the lawyers, they're the ones who get off.
But sometimes you hear people speak about, along with your human rights is your civic rights. Now your civic rights are rights that can be taken away. You're out here in the communities, you violate the laws, you're put into prison, so that
Those are civic rights.
That could be taken away. But they can never take away your human rights. Whether you are in prison, whether you are in Timbuktu or wherever, your human rights always remain with you.
Okay.
But you also have a right, Mrs. Christopher, to no unfair detainment.
Yes.
In other words, nobody should just take you up and put you in prison without any good reason and keep you there and things like that. They must have a reason for detaining you.
Well, I attended a workshop last week,
And you have the
one of
right
the
to trial.
One of the questions
A
that
fair
I
trial.
asked the facilitator, because I told her I was not sure how it is done. When an officer is going to arrest somebody, well, TV, I mean, you have internet now and you could see what's happening all over the world. Don't you have to read them their rights and all of that? And let them know they have a right to get a lawyer and all that. I am not sure how it is done here, and that is something I have to look at very closely, because they're supposed to be doing that.
Okay.
And sometimes that is part of our reporting too.
Okay,
Yes.
so you spoke about the legal rights and so, and that is why I'm glad you brought up that. And that is why we should have a discussion about legal aid, because everyone have a right to have legal representation.
Yeah.
So the government in some way needs to provide, if once a person cannot afford a lawyer, one should be provided for them so they can have that legal, that right can be met. At least that right can be met. So if we can have like a discussion with the personnel of legal aid,
Well,
that would be good.
Actually, they will tell you, not legal aid, but you heard the information that they have a legal organization, and some of them provide pro bono work. So sometimes, depends on your situation, they will really work for you for free, volunteer, and they go around the country and talk to people about this and so on. But still, I believe you should have a program on the legal aid so people could understand what it's all about.
Right. Now, had you finished mentioning all the steps of that boys' mentorship
No, I
program?
didn't actually. We have two left actually. But I want to go back to what Reverend Cassius.
I'll have to stop you. We have a caller. Working for you. Good afternoon.
That's why. How are you? Working for you, my buddy.
I am well, sir. Jam down. How are you?
We are just calling from the Circus University to big up the youngster there, the young guy there. I
Yes.
never met him before, but the Attorney General told me about him, and we want to see we young minds them shaping up like that. We don't in this country we don't groom criminals, We want good citizens. We want when they leave school, they come up good, and the young lady at the department, we want to thank her to seeing the good in this youngster and bring him into the department. That's what we want all the heads them in the different department do. When they recognize these talents, they grab them and nurture them. That is where we want. Because there ain't no man like Simmons and Bradshaw is laughing. They're laughing when head of department do these things. And Miss Connor or Miss Daly, what's her name? That's right.
Mrs. Christopher. Celia Christopher.
Miss Christopher, do not afraid to come in the media and highlight these things. The country needs to know these things.
John, they don't have to put it in the university.
Well, the court of conscience is watching, We listen consent. When we in parliament, we debate these things.
Man, invite me to the university this year.
We want to adore you and tell the youngsters stand straight and narrow. And we want all the young boys to continue and take a leaf out of that young boy book. Let's write working for all are we.
Yes, sir.
And we're getting back. Who can't hear will feel. That's what Zach said. Have a good day.
Thank you. Working for you, good afternoon. Hello. Working for you.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. We're hearing you.
Yes. A lot of the rights you're talking
Could you speak
about,
up? Could you speak a little bit louder, please?
a lot of the rights you're talking about are enshrined in our Constitution. If you read the preamble, you will get a guide. So our young persons will get a guide. I know we sign up about the rights of the child, but if you look at our Constitution, it speaks to the right of not just the child, but every single one.
All human beings.
So if you have a copy of our Constitution, what I would say is if some persons would, just like how we're discussing that, if you had our Constitution, and you will see what the Constitution says. My friend spoke, I think I mentioned about the police and so forth. They also speak to rights when it comes to that, and I guess she was right, because you must be informed of why and so forth. But at the end of the day, you still have a right to follow lawful instruction, or else it could be another charge could come. You see where I'm coming from? So if you feel as if your rights are being trampled upon, you can take it. And then at the end of the day, there are some cases where the court would allow you to represent yourself. So this is a right you have as well. So just in case some persons don't know, if you have the facts of the case, there are some cases where the court will recommend you get legal advice, which when it comes to murder, those serious things where you must have somebody to sit. And then there are some instances, especially in some other countries, some person might say, still insist they want to represent themselves, but the court recommend and assign a lawyer to make sure they're being guided.
Yes.
You get where I'm coming from.
Yes.
So these are some rights persons have. But at the end of the day, my son was talking about an interesting point. Parents do have rights as well, you know. And the parents' right is to make sure the child is brought up correctly.
That is correct. So yes.
If some persons
and the
believe
parents
the child
also have
to do as his or
responsibilities.
her like and get away with it, no. Because at the end of the day, the parents could be held criminally responsible if the child go down the road and do certain things because they're responsible for the child, especially if the child is underage. And we just passed a law recently, and the age of acknowledged to criminality has risen from 8 to 10. So it gone up a bit further where parents can be held criminally responsible for the behavior, in criminal acts, offenses are committed by their children. So therefore, the parent has a right to ensure the child follow his or her instruction as long as those instructions are lawful. If a parent sends a child to steal something, of course the child does not have to follow that instruction. So you see what we're coming from. The parent has a right, according to law, to make sure their children are properly brought up and protected.
Yes.
And if a child is doing anything that will endanger him or herself or someone else, the parent has a right to, some people get offended by these words, discipline the child, because if not, the parents could be held criminally responsible if anything happens to the child or to someone else.
Right.
Sometimes some persons don't like to hear these things, but the truth sometimes gets people upset for what?
Yeah, point well taken.
You know, so at the end of the day, our Constitution has a lot of the rights enshrined inside it, but I think a lot of people do not read it, therefore they do not understand it, and therefore they will look other places for the rights than our Constitution. Because remember, our country is a new country, so to speak, so therefore the laws and certain things enshrined in the Constitution will take into being certain things that certain persons are querying for. But our Constitution, the rights, are enshrined inside it. Even right now, you're doing the program if you have the chance. Look at the Constitution and you'll see a lot of rights.
Right. Thank you so much.
I think it has. Thanks much.
Okay.
Right.
Working for you, good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, we're talking about rights, human rights and that kind of thing. There's something in law which is called the judge's rules. I don't know if you get a chance, you could pay and get a copy of it and go through it.
Okay.
Details are the rights, treatment that should be given to prisoners, the way police officers should go about the duty in terms of, making arrests and reading your rights and all of that. if we get a chance, we'll probably look at that.
Yes, yes, and you see, because everyone has rights. Everyone has rights, but we also responsible. For example, all these rights that we have, there must be checks and balances. For example, we have a right to freedom of expression, but freedom of expression does not mean that we go and say anything. We go down the road and curse somebody and defame somebody's character in terms of what we say and so on. So there are checks and balances.
I understand all that clearly.
It doesn't mean that we go and we use profanities. I remember one time I heard somebody speaking about, you know, a notable person in the society, and they were using very derogatory language and saying things that were very, very insulting about the person. And I spoke to that person, and the person said to me, but I have freedom of expression. Now, freedom of expression does not give you a right. You have to be responsible with that freedom of expression that you have. And it's just that we have a right to life. Yes, I have a right to life, but I have to be responsible in the fact to respect somebody else's life. You understand what I'm saying? And I have a right to protect my life, but I have a responsibility to protect someone else's life too. So these things, there are checks and balances. It's not like, oh, I have a right to this, and so therefore I have a right, because we love to talk about rights. But what about the responsibilities that we also have? And what about respecting other people's rights? If I want my rights to be respected, I must respect the rights of others.
That's right. Yeah. Treat people the way you want to be treated.
Right. Okay, thank you very much for your call. Working for you, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Brother Leslie.
Yes, we are going to take one more call and then we have to end this program. Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon, Brother Leslie, and good afternoon to the panelists there.
Yes.
So, Leslie, to be truthful, the young men, them especially, I believe that the young man, they need to pay more attention to the parents. Because when I see how these young men out there getting on, these little boys just going to school, some of them in primary school, some of them just gone in high school, and the behavior of them, that big people cannot tell them nothing. Up to the night of the village after a football match, and it's twice happen. Little boys, the boys are going on, they try to fight, and bringing up people trying to part them and telling them behave themselves, and they wouldn't behave themselves. And so these violence just start. I believe that some of these things some of these things the parents, because I do not believe a parent supposed to got a young little boy, 14 years, 13 years, so unruly and so unbehave. You understand? I believe something needs to be done. And next thing, when the police them deal with them in the Ashway, they say they violate them and do all kind of thing to them. Sometimes you got to put down penalty on them. Yes. You cannot let them go to hand. You got to let others out their street. Why see what happened to your friend? Your friend, you understand?
Sure.
Right, then.
And that is why it is so important. The young man was speaking about the boys mentorship program. You know, for young boys between the ages of 12 to 16. You know, sometimes during that age, between 12 and 16, the developmental stage that they're in, it's a very tumultuous period in their lives, those adolescent and so on. And so therefore, that is the time when they most need guidance. When they're going through those stages, their bodies are changing. And they're now, you know, growing into manhood and all that sort of a thing, hormonal imbalances, and it can be very, very rocky, a rocky time, and that is where they need a lot of guidance. And parents need to be especially involved in the lives of their children around that time.
In terms of parent, you mentioned the word parent. This is an appeal to the churches and to the Ministry of Ecclesiastical Field. We do not have a national parenting program, and so many times when you have cases before the court, magistrate will say to final, will put in the order that they got to go to a parenting program, but we don't have that. So we are asking that the church, as a body, all of them, Evangelical Association and the Christian Council, if they can come up with a parenting program, because it doesn't matter how much training you give these children outside the home, we are putting them back in the same environment. And so when they go back in the same environment, right, they undo everything that you have done outside. So we really need that reinforcement. We need the parenting. We really need the parenting program.
Right. We're out of time, actually.
Yes.
We have to wrap this program up. But you were going to say something.
Yes.
And, you know.
I'll wrap it up. But you're very right. I think parents need to start taking their responsibility serious. Because the state can only do so much. But it comes down to the individual parents who they have to start doing something in their home. We can come and assist and help you out, but you have to start seeing your responsibility as serious. The day you decide to become a parent, you have to recognize that you have a responsibility for this life. To guide and to mold and to develop that human being into a respectful young man or young woman, to become a model citizen of society. So we really want to kind of just ask the parents to be more, be there, because what I recognize throughout the program is that a lot of the children need attention. They seek that you see the attention-seeking behavior, and over time, as it continues to be ignored by the parents, it becomes worse. It turns into crime and so on. And so a lot of them just need love and they need care for. But a lot of these things have been ignored over time. And the behavior develop, and then it gets worse. And then the state has to get involved, whether to get assistance, give them assistance in terms of social assistance or whatever, because we see a lot of these persons on the food vouchers and so on, and they don't know proper budgeting. They don't know how to budget their money. They know how to speak to people, a basic thing, how to have a positive attitude, how to dress as well when you're going to a job interview, and so on. But what we need is parents. We don't need persons who's just there to go to work and just pay the bills. We need parents for the children.
Right. Thank you, Dion. Mrs. Christopher, what do you have to say?
Well, my parting shot would be, again, appeal to the churches, please to come up with a parenting program. We are here to work with you. We can all work together, and we can do our own little part, because as I said before, it doesn't matter how much we do with those children outside of the home. And we tend to want to cast the blame on the church and the school and everybody else. We need to get the parent, the critical component of any program is getting the buy-in from the parents, and that is a big challenge we have. Mm-hmm. We have a challenge with that. So,
okay, I want to thank both of you for coming on today's program. Mrs. Christopher, the Director of the Department of Gender Affairs, and Gender Field Officer, Mr. Dion Brown, to discuss a very important topic, that of the role of the department, which encompasses quite a lot. As you can see, we spoke today about human rights, we spoke about gender equality, we spoke about relationship abuse, we spoke about mentoring of boys. The department covers quite a lot, and so I want to thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for giving us this time, and I would like to bring my other staff members here to explain to the public what they do and to tell them how they could access their programs.
Okay, right. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's program. Thanks to all of our listeners, those of you who are faithful to this program, who continue to listen from week to week. We continue to appreciate your company. Next week we will be back for another edition of Working for You. And I want to encourage you to come out and to go to the independence activities, those that are on the calendar of activities, to go out and to take your family. Independence is a time where we celebrate nationhood. It's all of us. It doesn't matter whatever party you are backing. It doesn't matter what sex you are, what race you are, what religion you are, what is your creed. It's a time for all of us. So thank you very much. And next week We will be back for another edition of Working for You. Until then, I am Les Roy Williams.
Working for You. A weekly talk radio program which highlights developments of national interest and the activities of your St. Kitts Nevis government. Join host Les Roy Williams as he presents news, views, reports, and interviews about everything regarding the activities of the Team Unity government and the building of our communities and the development of St. Kitts Nevis. Tune in and call in to interact with your government and share your views regarding the upward forward development of your community and our beautiful Twin Island Federation. Working for You is weekly, every Wednesday live from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. on ZIZ Radio, Win FM, and Sugar City FM with rebroadcast on participating stations. Working for You.